Okay, hi there. This is going to be story time, and I'm going to tell you about some snakes that I have met. Uh, the first snake story is from 1990, when I lived in the Ortiz Mountains outside of the town of Cerrillos in New Mexico, and I was buying this 10-acre piece of land far, far in the back of the mesa at the foot of the mountains. It was hard to get to. There was no electric, there was no water, there was no heat, there was no Wi-Fi then in those days. Just me living in this little travel trailer in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And in time I added solar panels and had some light and music and a propane tank so that I could have heat and a well for water. So slowly but surely it became a little bit more habitable out there. But around 1990, I guess this happened. I came home and my cat Freeway, a Maine Coon, had taken this enormous interest in the cabinet under my sink. For some reason she was just really sniffing and sniffing. I couldn't, she just wanted to get in there, so I opened the door for her and she started to charge in, and she went halfway in, and then she kind of slowly backed out, and her fur was like double the size that it normally is. She was just this puffball of fur. I looked in there, I didn't see anything. I thought, what kind of a mouse would scare her like that? Anyway, I didn't see anything. So then I closed that door and I started to pull the drawers that were to the right of that door. There were 4 of them, and in the first one I had like my utensils, and in the second one I had flashlights and batteries and all the kinds of stuff that you have in a junk drawer. And then in the third drawer I had tins of nails and nuts and bolts and screws and that kind of stuff. So when I got to the third drawer, here was a snake, and it had wound itself all around all those tin cans full of nuts and bolts and screws and nails. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I cannot be the damsel in distress right now. There's nobody to rescue me except for myself. And so I closed the door very gently, and I took the cat and I put it in the back and closed that door off so that she was safe back there. I didn't know what kind of snake it was. I didn't get to see its tail end, and it wasn't rattling at me. In any event, I put on layers and layers and layers of clothing at this point. Sweaters and jackets and coats and scarf around me, and I had on hats and mittens, and I figured if this snake is going to get me, it's going to have to go through all of these garments first. So once I was properly dressed and with sunglasses, you can imagine what the snake must have thought when it saw something like me coming. Anyway, I pulled that drawer back out again really slowly. In the meantime, I had already opened the door and left it open. And so I'm pulling this drawer out slowly. And as I'm doing that, the snake starts to stand up in the drawer, and it's looking at me now. And it was only 2 steps from that kitchen drawer to the door, so I didn't have far to go. But I took that entire drawer with that snake sitting halfway upright looking at me and threw it out the door with all those cans of stuff. And it landed, and for some reason it did not splinter. It was really good sturdy wood. But the snake, it sat straight up on its tail and decided, to hell with that, I'm getting away from this crazy person, and it took off. And as it took off, I realized it was a bull snake. And the bull snake is really actually very good and protective against rattlers. So had I known, I might have been a little bit more gentle in putting it down instead of just throwing the entire drawer out the door. About 10 years later, I was living in a casita up on the same mountain, also with solar electric and propane. And that time the casita had like about 1.5 feet underneath it that was open. It had been built on these pylons. And one morning I went out to feed the birds, to put more food into their feeder. It was one of these plastic cylinders hanging on a metal bar. And so I went out there, I unscrewed the lid, let it drop, and when it fell, there was this there was this noise coming from where my feet were, and I looked down, and I had missed hitting a rattlesnake by about 6 inches. That's how close the lid fell to the rattlesnake. And it was doing its thing. I'm gonna get you, right? So I mean, I just stopped and I looked at it, and I sent it some really good energy because I don't have anything against snakes. I think they're wonderful. We need them. We need them for rodent control, and especially out there in the boonies. I mean, there's like oodles and oodles of mice and pack rats and God only knows what out there. So I just looked at the snake and I said, I am really sorry. I didn't know you were there. And I very, very slowly just backed away from it and picked up the lid and finished the feeding process later when it was gone. But that same snake now, it came out from underneath my casita every single morning at exactly the same time. It was almost as though the snake had German genes on it because it was so darn punctual that I could set my watch on it almost every single day when it came out of the house. And then I would go to the foot of the bird feeder and it would just curl up there waiting for the mice. You know, the mice would come and they would wait for the birds to drop the seed. And so I had this happy little ecological system going on there with the snake being part of it. And got to where every single morning I would come out, the snake would already be there because it had come out at the same time every day. And on my way to work, I would say good morning to it. On my way home, it would still be there. And then it would head back under the casita at the same time every day. And I gave it the name Fang. It was actually a very nice snake. I could count on where it was going to be. It never scared me. I liked that snake. But Fang had a twin brother, and I called that one Pang because that one never stopped slithering. And where I lived, we had these tall prairie grasses, so you couldn't really see it until you were almost on top of it. And it made my dog Tashi pretty nervous because he used to go bouncing across the mesa up there. You can't just bounce over a snake without upsetting it. Anyway, Tashi managed to do all right. But those were my two snake stories, and when I see people up in arms about snakes and wanting to kill them, I wish you would just quietly back away and let them do their snaky thing. They're very good and useful to us. And so that's my story, but close encounters with snakes I have known. All right, ciao.